I'd be trying to get in probably around here right at VWAP. I'm going to either set my stop to the top of this bar or the top of this Asia high. I know this is a little bit of a wider stop, 11 points, but my target makes sense here. I'm targeting 30 points on this. You could trade this just off this VWAP. You can set a sell limit in there. I'd prefer to take this when we try to push back up towards that VWAP and set my stop up there. And I would just be looking to take this to the lower band. So 4-point stop, 10-point take profit. I'd want to see buyers on the order flow or failed selling down there. And I would look to take a trade here with a breakout of this first band back up to this second band. I want to be aware of the general area of VWAP. There are times where you'll see direct taps of that VWAP and price move away from it. I've seen a lot of people start to get into volume concepts, and I've been getting asked a lot of questions about what volume indicators do I personally use. And so in this video today, I'm going to be breaking down an indicator I always have on my chart, and that is VWAP. I'll be breaking down what is VWAP, how it's calculated, and then how I personally like to use VWAP. I think there's a lot of great setups utilizing VWAPs. I'll show you how to anchor for specific times and how to identify trends versus ranges and specific conditions that I personally like to see when I'm taking momentum trades, taking breakout trades, taking range trades. And so I'll be diving into that in this video. Let's go ahead and get into the charts. I'm just going to have a blank chart with a sessions on here. So this is going to be my New York session, my London session, my Tokyo session, Asia session. And then the only other indicator I'm going to toss up on here is going to be VWAP. VWAP auto anchored. So this is automatically going to anchor your VWAP at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's the reopen time. It's the Globex reopen. I'll also show you really quick. And one second, let me get these bands off here. I'll touch on those bands in a second. So the other thing you can do with VWAP is you can anchor it from any point on the chart. You come down to your projections on this left-hand panel on TradingView. You can go ahead and pull your anchored VWAP, and then you just select a point you'd like to anchor it on. Typically, what I'm looking at for VWAP anchors is either a specific time, or I'm just looking for volume spikes on this volume chart to anchor that VWAP off of. And I will typically color my anchored VWAP either white or blue, depending on what the color of my auto anchored VWAP is. So sometimes I'll have multiple VWAPs on my chart. Sometimes they're relevant, sometimes they aren't. So that's just how you would go about anchoring it. Typically, I'm mostly just using this overnight VWAP on an asset like GC. I think GC is excellent to use VWAP on. It is a single asset, so I think it respects volume incredibly well. And other assets like NQ, ES, they'll still respect VWAP, but because you have a number of different assets in there, the S&P ES is 500, NQ is 100, but it's very heavily weighted on the top 10 stocks. Those make up about 75% of the asset. I think it respects volume a little bit less. So I'm going to be going over GC in all of these examples just because I think it respects VWAP and its bands incredibly well. So VWAP, just baseline. What is VWAP? Volume weighted anchored price. Volume weighted average price. So essentially how that's working is you are taking the number of contracts or shares traded at a specific price. So you multiply the volume by the number of shares or contracts, and you do that for every different price point. You add it all up, and then you are dividing that by the total. So you'll have a total value, and then you're dividing it by the total amount of volume transacted. That's how you're getting your volume weighted average price. So this 6 p.m. reopen, this is going to be my VWAP. It's just going to plot at every single reopen. So you can see this is Friday's price action, Friday the 9th of January, 2026. You just have this nice blue line that plots out. There's times where you tap it and you move away from it. You can see this was a very clean tap on the going into 1 p.m. here. Came right down to VWAP, tapped it, and then moved away. This was a clean distribution leg. There's a couple other confluences I would use with VWAP in here, such as the IB. So since we broke this IB high, I'd be looking for the long setup. This comes down into VWAP, and I want to be checking things like order flow to really see what's going on behind the candles there. But in general, you can take VWAP taps as a pretty reliable setup. You can also have breakouts through VWAP, but this is just your standard VWAP. Now, if I want to go ahead and anchor another point on GC, typically where I'm anchoring my secondary VWAP is going to be at 820. That is the COMEX open. If you're over at and looking at NQ or ES, I would be using the 930 New York open unless we have data coming out. Like this Friday, we had NFP data. You can see that large volume spike. This 820 COMEX VWAP is going to include that data in there. I will always want to be aware of those volume spikes on my chart. If we've got CPI or NFP, one of these bigger reports, those volume spikes are useful to be including in your VWAP. I want to see all of that data. Now, in terms of VWAP, right, you can see on this reopen, you have this initial print, looks bullish initially, then the candle flips. And then you start using VWAP as resistance and price moves heavily away from this VWAP. You get a clean breakout through VWAP. Buyers can't sustain this above here. Sellers bring us back below VWAP. You break out again. Buyers are sustaining above VWAP for a longer period of time. Come back down below VWAP. You have another tap in here as well. And you move away from that again. Sellers bring us back below VWAP. And then that NFP candle comes up and we pretty much stay above VWAP for the rest of the day. So when I'm looking at VWAP, something I'm considering is how long are we above or below VWAP? That is going to tell me who's in control. Are buyers or sellers in control? So here in this overnight session, sellers are in control until we get to this point at 8:45. So for 2 hours and 45 minutes, sellers have been in control. You can see buyers start to step up. Okay, buyers get back in control. We're above VWAP from 8:50 till 9:50, so about an hour. So previously sellers were in control for over 2 hours. Now the buyers are only in control for an hour. Sellers regain control again from 10 till 12:55, or 12:25. So sellers were in control for 2 hours. Buyers bring it back up, and now we're sustaining above this VWAP. Now buyers are clearly in control above this price point. So I really like to think about time when I'm looking at VWAP, who's in control for longer. That typically gives me a good general bias on the day. If I'm just using a VWAP with no standard deviation bands. Same thing over here on NASDAQ in that Friday's price action session. You can see sellers are clearly in control. Buyers bring us back up. There was an attempt to break through here. It failed. Buyers bring us back up. Sellers dip us below. Buyers quickly recover above it. Sellers dip us below it again, but buyers quickly bring us back up. Same thing here in the London session. Sellers try to push below VWAP. Buyers bring us back up. And then this New York session gets a little chaotic because of that NFP candle. And then price levels out a bit. There was also supposed to be tariff news from the Supreme Court. Once that was cleared, like, hey, we're not getting this news event, price started to rally up and we maintained above VWAP the entire day. So I want to stay bullish in these conditions. I'm going to apply bands in a second. I'm going to show you ES as well here. Same sort of deal. NQ was a little bit stronger in that overnight session, but you can see very clean overnight VWAP tap on that retracement leg. We did end up breaking our IB high as well, so I want to remain bullish. And if I'm using a fib in here, I'm not going to go over fib concepts in this video, but you come down to that 0.5, you have VWAP there as well. Buyers immediately pick it up and continue to hold us above VWAP for the rest of the day. I'm going to hop over back to GC here. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to apply this band multiplier, and I'm going to make sure that my upper band 1 and lower band 1 are applied. I also have upper band and lower band 2 in here. And this third one, you can use it. I don't really use that third band. I often find that price doesn't really trade outside of that, so I don't think it's relevant. What these bands are doing is essentially you're taking this VWAP and you're applying standard deviation to it. So it's going to plot lines outside of it. These are excellent support and resistance levels. So here we're trending below VWAP. You're trending between the first and the second band on this downtrend. So I'm not really interested in buys here until we come back above this first band and we make an attempt to push through this VWAP. Price pushes up directly to this first band, this first upper band. Sellers start to step in. we come back up to that same level, and then so this is used as a rejection point. We come down to that lower band. Then this lower band is used as support. Buyers push us back up above VWAP. We get back up to that first standard deviation band. It's a resistance level. Come back down to VWAP. Try to break through that first band again. Again, resistance level. Come up again, resistance level. So a lot of the times you will see GC range between its first standard deviation band and VWAP. There are other times where you'll push through these bands and you'll be trading towards that second band. Like in this instance, you finally get that pushes right up to that second band, rejects off of it, comes back down to that lower band. It's trying to use that as support. NFP candle comes out, taps that second standard deviation band, and then rallies away from it. And then this uptrend in New York and in this COMEX session, you're trending above the first band and you're using that second band as resistance. You do get above that second band for a little bit. Sellers bring us back down, and then we sell off below that first band and back down into VWAP. On this return leg, on this bullish distribution leg, we come back up to that first band. It's used as resistance. Buyers find support in here. There's not really a relevant level on this. Buyers find support. They bring us back up to that first band. Resistance again, and then you get that clean pop. And now this is being used as support. So you can use these bands as support resistance areas. I think they're useful for that, especially on GC. You'll have days where you see very clear trends form. I'm typically just using the overnight session VWAP. What I'm looking for on different conditions with VWAP is, like in this instance, right? You have this decent push, then we start to fail below VWAP, come back up to VWAP, it's used as resistance. If I'm in a long in here, say I'm in a long off this APM open, and I want to see price expand higher up to this New York high. This is another stat that I use all the time. I'm looking for a strong push through VWAP. You have strong buyers in here, but you can see from the volume, you get that volume spike at APM. The next candle has high volume on it. Candle after that, lower volume, lower volume, lower volume, lower volume. And then you get below VWAP. You're now using that as resistance. Sellers get aggressive right at that VWAP, and we sell off and then start to downtrend between that first and that second band. Buyers make an attempt. They push us back up towards that VWAP. It's used as resistance again. So I'd like to be entering, if I'm trading this overnight session, this is a little too late. I'm going to be asleep by here. But if I'm trading this overnight session, initially this is an aggressive sell-off. So I want to follow this trend. Once I see we push up to VWAP, I'm going to be looking for those sellers to step back up. I would look to short this here with my stop either above this upper band or above this structure point and trade this down to this New York low. There's some statistical significance with that, but this is a trade I would hold all night till we hit that target. I don't mind holding trades for a long time, and I'd just be adjusting my stop in based off either this lower band or based off pivot points. These pivot points are a little bit cleaner. So if I shorted this here, what I'm going to be looking at, this would be the initial position. I'd be trying to get in probably around here, right at VWAP. I'm going to either set my stop to the top of this bar or the top of this Asia high. I know this is a little bit of a wider stop, 11 points, but my target makes sense here. I'm targeting 30 points on this. This is totally appropriate. This starts selling off. Once this structure forms and you continue to sell off below it, I'm going to bring my stop into here. And if, I don't want to hold this all night, then I might get out down here. I might just take a shorter trade, but I definitely bring my stop in here. And then once I see this pivot form, sellers step back up, I'm just going to adjust it to the top of there. You start to have this distribution leg below this lower band. This is a very clean trend. I don't know if this is a clean trend yet. You can see there's a little bit of consolidation in here. There's some buy candles, but once you start to get this clean downtrend, then I'm just going to trail my stop based off this upper band. I'm going to put it a little bit above that upper band. I could get stopped out on that. I'd totally be okay with that since the stop is in profit. Another trade I could be looking to take if I'm a London session trader, I see this a lot. You come up to this VWAP point, you start to reject. You could trade this just off this VWAP. You could set a sell limit in there. I'd prefer to take this when we try to push back up towards that VWAP and set my stop up there. And I would just be looking to take this to the lower band. So 4-point stop, 10-point take profit. I'm not looking for this trend to really continue too much further down. You can see any of these attempts to push back up towards VWAP starts to be a resistance level. You don't necessarily have to get right up to VWAP to start to see that rejection. It's more of I want to be aware of the general area of VWAP. There are times where you'll see direct taps of that VWAP and price move away from it. But again, how long have we been below this VWAP? All night. So I want to remain bearish here. I want to be able to properly identify that trend. VWAP helps me do that. Now here, when we start to get this distribution leg in New York, when we're getting this strong push through VWAP, I want to see more buyers piling in here. You can see it on the CVD. You're starting to get strong buyers coming in. They use that VWAP as support. Price pushes up above that upper band, and now this upper band is being used as a support level to take us a little bit higher. We get up to that second standard deviation band, start to stall out up there, come back a little bit lower, dip below that first band. And if I'm looking to take the trade here, I'd want to see buyers on the order flow or failed selling down there. And I would look to take a trade here with a breakout of this first band back up to this second band. So that's kind of how I'm using VWAP with just general direction, general trends, some range trading in there. I'm also looking for those momentum plays where you do have big buyers or big sellers step up back at VWAP, or they push strongly through VWAP. That's another condition I often look for. I'm just going to go back and play a couple more days right here. Very clear. Sellers are in control. You're getting this big distribution. Price pushes back up to that VWAP. Buyers fail up at this point, and then heavy sellers start to come back in again. If I'm taking the long down here, say I took a long based off this distribution leg, and maybe I'm looking for this upper band to hit as my second target, I would really be looking for VWAP here initially. So as we break above this first band again, you could try it here or here. Each of these times that we've tried to break above this upper band, we've failed. This lower band, this first initial lower band, we failed. So I have to be aware of that this might be a riskier trade. But if I'm seeing good buyers on the order flow, I would maybe take a trade like this, where I'm looking for these strong buyers to come and push us through VWAP. I would likely just set this to the low of a 15-minute candle. The low of a 15-minute candle, a strong 15-minute, and then just be looking for VWAP as a quick scalp based off the momentum of the market. And if I want to take this higher, what do I want to see? I want to see strong buyers push us through VWAP. I don't really want to see any sellers show up here. So we get that strong push through VWAP. This would be my first target. This upper band would be my secondary target. If I'm looking at that, when we have this failed push through here, I'd probably get trailed out, because the way I trail my stops is here initially we get the strong push. I wouldn't really trail this. Maybe I'd go break even with this just based off that strong 5-minute candle or close to break even. I just tighten that risk up and I trail my stops based off these strong 5 minutes. So you get another strong 5-minute print in here with high volume. So my stop would be either break even or in profit here. And then as this continues up, I see this wick form. I bring my stop up to the bottom of that wick and get out half of my contracts at VWAP. If this is going to run, then I really don't want to see this strong bullish candle get faded. So I'd probably get stopped out here on my trail. In the reverse side, you could also just look to take this once you see that false push above VWAP, or you could wait to see that rejection at VWAP. Price comes back up towards VWAP. It doesn't tap it. And once you see those sellers start to step back in, you could take the trade here with your stop above VWAP. I think it's an excellent tool. I really think that if you fully understand VWAP conditions, the ranges, the breakouts, the trends, you can be profitable just off that. Here in this instance, I would probably set my stop slightly above VWAP, and then I'd just be looking to take this to the lower band. This is a little bit lower of a risk to reward here. But if you do see those heavy sellers step up through that first band, I might expand my TP out to that secondary band, or I'd use something like a volume profile, maybe session lows in there, depending on the asset, if there is a stat to back that. So a little rundown of VWAP, quick just 20-minute video on this. If you guys have questions, let me know in the comments down below. Hit the like, subscribe button. If you have any suggestions for videos, leave them in the comments below. I'll be looking for those as well. But if you are looking to use volume concepts, I think VWAP is a great starting point. It's very simple, easy to understand. It's easy to identify trends, see who's in control, maybe who's getting faded, all of that. But I will see you guys in the next video.